So, good morning from New York, good afternoon for the colleagues that join us from different parts of the world. For my office, UNITAR New York office, I extend a warm welcome to all of you. We are extremely proud to continue our Free Blue collaboration with this training initiative, in close collaboration, of course, Benjamin, with the Global Foundation for Performing Arts, the diplomatic community, trying to focus on building back better on climate culture. Climate change has become one of the hottest topics in the United Nations and the world. It goes hand to hand with sustainable development and sustainable development goals. As you already know, this is going to be a 2 days training. Tomorrow we'll have a permanent representative of Nepal who will be addressing you. We hope that this event today, that is more or less dedicated to SDG 4, leaving no one behind and validating voices, which have a main objective is to discuss topics directly related to health and well-being, SDG 3, affordable and clean energy, SDG 7, decent work and economic growth, SDG 8, and sustainable cities and communities, SDG 11, and climate action. Has been already mentioned that the United Nations has declared 2021 the International Year of Creative Economy for Sustainable Development. This creative economy is expansive and is actors are diverse artists that will be essential for building back better after COVID-19 crisis with new forms of creativity, presentations and models to advance in our society. Before we start, UNITAR New York office has a long relation with Ms. Lucia Wow, Executive Director of the Global Foundation for Performing Arts, with you, Benjamin Woodrow, President of the Global Foundation for Performing Arts. Thank you very much for conducting the business of today. You have been doing that kindly in the past, and we know we are in good hands for this conversation today. So thank you very much to both of you for joint efforts with the United Nations, in particular, Training and Research Institute in New York. So to all the participants, welcome. I'm very pleased and see the large number of participating personalities. Also to our distinguished panelists, thank you very much for your time. We have a special person today from the Sustainable Development Department of the United Nations Economic and Social Affairs, which is Nayara de Costa Chavez. Is a dear friend. She is an international relations analyst who currently serves as Senior Sustainable Development Officer at the Division for Sustainable Development of the United Nations. So Nayara is one of our hands in putting together a learning center that normally happens in the month of July for the Sustainable Development Goals within the high-level political forum of the United Nations. So I am really interested to hear her remarks on today's presentation. I will stop here because I know we have a limited time. Just wanted to say that it will be very happy tomorrow when we restart and listen to the remarks for the permanent representative of Nepal to the United Nations. So with this little welcome remarks, I hope and I wish everyone stay safe and well. COVID-19 has hit us in every corner of the world. We are seeing better ways now with vaccination processes and people feeling more confident and more able to being in a more open environment around the world. So let's keep fighting. Let's keep this trend of protecting our loved ones and our environment all together. So thank you very much, Benjamin. I'm going to yield to you and to Nayara for this United Nations segment of these important sessions today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Suazo. This is our second conference this year in partnership with UNITAR dedicated to building back better. Our first one in March was dedicated to diversity in the performing arts. And this conference, this two-day conference, is dedicated to the large topic of climate, its impact, its effects, what we've learned, what we're thinking, what our practice is, what our practice could be, and some of the lessons we've learned or during the extra time we've had during COVID-19 to reconsider what we do and how we do it. My name's Benjamin Woodruff. I'm the president of the Global Foundation for the Performing Arts. We are an advocacy-based, not-for-profit organization based in New York, but with myself in Geneva. And we are committed to highlighting the value of the performing arts sector to policymakers and providing useful information and links for artists. We really believe in dialogue, bringing people together, building platforms for connection and education. The performing arts sector is enormous: music, dance, film, design, theatre, and we cannot but build the future of the performing arts sector unless we do it together and internationally. And I'm delighted to welcome soon our speakers and international panelists who will share their experiences and lessons and projects soon. But for the moment, it's a great pleasure to welcome Naira Costa from the United Nations in New York, working in the sector of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, which really are a key driver or vision plan for the United Nations. And who better to tell us a little bit more about the SDGs than yourself? So Naira, please welcome, and I pass the microphone to you now.
Very much, Benjamin, and many thanks to Marco and my colleagues and friends from UNITAR for this invitation, and to the Global Foundation for the Performing Arts. So as mentioned, I work at UNDESA at the Division for the Sustainable Development Goals, and my role is all about stakeholder engagement. It's creating space, supporting for different sectors, different actors to engage and support the implementation of the 2030 Agenda, and at the same time to make their contributions also visible at the global level. So I have just a few things to say, I think more like introductory remarks. The first one is this recall that the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, they are grounded in this understanding that, you know, the challenges that we face in the world today, they require engagement, they require collaboration, they require partnerships, and this in the broadest sense possible. So it's really a pleasure to me to be here with you. This is the performing arts, the professional, the arts is a sector that we really need to bring more and make more visible at the global level. And I really congratulate UNITAR for creating this space and for this dialogue. We have been seeing throughout the implementation of the SDGs that this diverse approaches are emerging. There are media, social media, there are conferences, programs, websites. There are several ways that the SDGs are being adjusted, are being translated to the public, are being created this awareness, this passion around the SDGs. But I think we see that this is an ongoing process, and that it needs more is actually needed. So we are, this is the time of the year for us here in New York, working on the SDGs. This is one of the busiest times, because this is the moment where we prepare for the high-level political forum. Every year in July, governments usually come to New York, or now they come from wherever they are. They join for a global, many events and discussions about how the SDGs are being implemented. And this is what is happening in New York, or in the virtual format, starting next week. I usually say that the HLPF is a key moment for probably three things, probably more, because then also networking, etc. But it's a moment for stock taking, it's a moment for exchange and learning, and it's a moment for looking forward.
One thing I think it's interesting is that every year the Secretary General of the United Nations, he releases a report about the state of the SDG implementation, and this report is available now. There'll be more like a glossy version coming, but the data is showing how if we were not on track to achieve the SDGs before the pandemic, make it even worse, and the impact is really significant. The estimate is just that only in 2020, we have an additional 120 or 124 million people pushed back into poverty. 250 million full-time jobs were lost. And I am sure your sector was one of those that was hugely affected as well. And if you take a look at the data about education, the Secretary General calls it a generational catastrophe. So there's so much being brought by that report. Also in terms of climate, because this is the theme of the event today, we saw that there was some slowdown associated with COVID-19, but it was little to slow the climate crisis. So in recovering from COVID, this focus on recovering in a sustainable fashion is really key, and is a message that the Secretary General will be reinforcing during the HLPF. We also saw how the academia, how technology, how science was critical, and also the social protection, how the role of the local governments of the different sectors were key to help us through the process of the crisis of COVID, but this will also continue. So those just a few highlights from the report. I will be posting the link on the chat box so you can also see and see the goals that you are more interested in as well. Just in terms of knowledge exchange and looking forward, the HLPF, and now because it's virtual, it's creating a very good opportunity for those that are interested in understanding or following or checking the discussions at the global level on sustainable development to follow up. The official sessions will be held from 6 to 15 of July, and they will be webcast and they will be accessible. But I think also the most interesting is what happens around as well. And I want to call your attention to the SDG Learning and Training and Practice, which is a series of 10 learning sessions that DESA in partnership, collaboration, and work with UNITAR, we have been putting together since 2016. Those sessions are coordinated by several partners. They address the goals on the review at this SDGs, at this HLPF. And I invite you to check this event, and perhaps next year you could consider also applying for one session during the HLPF, so we could also try to reinforce the connections. We will also have the SDG in Action Film Festival on the 12th July. I'll be posting the link. It's becoming quite an interesting process. Also something that we are also learning to connect with this community as well. So I'll be sharing this information with you. And for those that are interested in announcing commitments and actions on SDGs or projects that you are implementing, I invite you to take a look at the SDG Acceleration Actions. There will be a specific event about it, but also there is a whole platform that you can connect with and showcase your work as well. So I think I'll stop here. I'm happy to clarify any doubt, and I'll be posting some links on the chat box. Thank you so much. Over to you, Benjamin.
Thank you very much, Nayara. The SDGs, for those of you or our audience who have not had a chance to really have a look, are a broad selection of priorities that the UN has adopted for its vision until 2030. And it's really driving the work of the UN and the allocation of resources and commitments. So reading about the SDGs and finding ones that align with your practice and sharing innovation in the fields that you are along those SDGs is very helpful for many international or practitioners and organizations. Thank you very much, Nayara. It's now my pleasure to introduce our speakers for this session today. We have 6 panelists tomorrow at the same time, and today we have 5 panelists joining us. And what I will do now is introduce our panelists in order. I'm going to start with somebody that needs to be introduced first because she's joining us from Tasmania, and the time difference is terrible. I know this from myself being an Australian, but I'm most grateful that Anna Cernez has joined us today. And so I would like to start with Anna to allow her to get to bed after this session. So Anna, I'll just give a brief description, Anna, and then I'll pass to you. Anna started in oceanography. You have a background in oceanography before moving into performing arts management. You co-founded Artology in 2011, which develops creative potential through experiential learning in the arts. Currently, Anna is Managing Director of Progressive Graham Wood Foundation and Director of Spring Bay Mill, once home to the world's largest wood chip mill, repurposed and rejuvenated as an event space for arts, music, politics, and ecology. What I am most interested about Anna and her work is that you are clearly passionate about the power of creativity and the certainty that natural ecosystem regeneration is doable. I like people that use words like doable. I relate to that very much. So Anna, I'm delighted to welcome you from Tasmania. I give the floor to you to say a few words about what you do, what you have been doing, and how you're addressing the big issue of climate in your practice. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners on the country in which I meet today, the land of the Gadigal people of the Aurora Nation. I recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture, and pay my respects to their elders past and present and emerging. Thank you, everyone. It's a delight to be here. I might just start by playing a very short video about Spring Bay Mill to just introduce the space. There is sound, but that's okay. Thank you very much. So in its heyday, the mill was processing 600 tonnes of wood chips per annum, or 100,000 trees clear-felled every year. And the opportunity to buy the mill appeared suddenly when it became known that a various group of logging buyers were chasing financial support. And nobody expected a group of philanthropists to buy it, which is exactly what happened when wealthy, one in particular environmentalist who knew the value of culture and arts to the community, put up his hand. So we've been converting the mill, Spring Bay Mill, into a public event space, and we've had a lot of challenges along the way, including a Senate inquiry from an aggressive state government. But the repurposing of the industrial buildings is complete, with 3 venues that you saw briefly in a sort of staggered video there. And the amphitheatre, which was where the tons of wood chips were shipped off to Japan to make the paper. So there's nothing like launching an event space at the end of the world in February 2020, as mainland Australia was smouldering from the bushfires and COVID hit. And like everyone else, we had to really reassess, be agile and adapt to survive and thrive. Now we're employing 40 people, which is more than 50% more than the former destructive wood chip mill did, and whose wages were subsidised by the government. So I just wanted to give a really quick snapshot of what the Australian situation is in climate and the arts. Our Conservative federal government has refused to sign up to the net zero emissions target by 2050. More than 70 countries have adopted the target, yet despite this national embarrassment, every Australian state has signed up to the net zero by 2050, either as a target or a goal, as well as public and private companies, including arts companies. And what is being discussed at board levels, I'm included on a number of performing arts venues and arts companies, is not if we sign up to some goal, it's how we're going to go about it. So it's really is corporates and non-for-profits that's leading the way in that space. Another embarrassing moment for us last week was UNESCO recommended the Great Barrier Reef be placed on the World Heritage in Danger list due to water management issues and climate change. In the last few days, a report from demographers at the Australian National University found the predictions of the Australian population growth has significantly been revised down from earlier predictions. And the number one reason is that young people are not having babies due to climate change. The Australia Council, which is our government's art funding and advisory body, funding has been declining nearly 20% since our Labor government left in 2013. And when COVID hit, the government announced that it would more than double the costs of the humanitarian degrees in an effort to deter students from studying the arts, and instead funneled them into employable fields such as teaching, nursing and maths. Our government did roll out a multi-billion-dollar rescue JobKeeper package. However, it excluded freelancers, and this caused immediate outcry from workers in the creative industries, as a large chunk of them are freelancers. There has been some clawback, and the government, state governments are creating funding package to help the arts and the sector to reactivate, and that has helped. So just with this snapshot, I could go on, but against it, this is where we are today and what we're discussing around the to better arts and the cultural sector in a world that's changing and worrying climate. So a couple of projects that we do, that we're pursuing, and the thinking behind them. At the mill, we present and support creative collaborations at all levels, with the goal that anyone that comes onto the site has a deep experience with nature. And that's through self-present events, conferences, weddings, festivals, concerts, whatever. We're also changing the tide through jobs with the local community. So some were employed to actually chop down trees, and they're being re-employed to sort of set up lights and stages, etc. Now, our challenge is to make it a viable business, and we're gaining financial stability as we look towards models such as the hybrid conference and performance, different experiences via film and residencies. One such example is a collaboration with Van Diemen's Band and the Tasmanian Youth Orchestra and Chorale. So as performing tours around the country are cancelled, we look to new formats to connect the musicians together and their communities whilst responding to the issues around them. So with some funding from the government, state government and philanthropic support, we created a beautiful film of the performance called Song of Birds, which is a traditional Catalan song, which was released earlier this month, showing nature at its finest. I'd love to show you the film, but it's short, so I'll put it in the chat section shortly. We also collaborate with other cultural institution, Mona, inviting 12 artists from different disciplines, performing arts disciplines, to camp out at the mill for 3 days with the goal of presenting their creative responses to the site in a public performance. Its success is also leading to a lot of other residencies and performance outcome. Now, it's not everyone can go and buy an environmentally destructive business and turn it into a thriving, living arts space. Ensuring there's employment for arts workers, presenting performances, and we also host conferences with themes such as rewilding, sunflowers, and the future of work. So just another example, the devastating bushfires that I'm sure many of you have heard in Australia in the 2019-20 killed or displaced nearly 3 billion animals and destroyed 10 million hectares of land. To compare, England's land mass is 13 million. And the Federal Environment Department's report found the bushfires swept through 80% of known habitats of 50 listed species, and then COVID hit. So in the midst of this terrible tragedy, it's the artists that are banding together to raise money, donate their time, creativity, to bring awareness of the science behind climate change and its impact to a wider audience. I call this saving lives. This is nothing new. Artists are one of the first to deeply feel and respond through their art to the issues of the day and feel that it's their responsibility to connect, rattle the cages of the establishment, or document the emotional experience. With climate change and the role of technology playing an important part, it brings our experiences closer together, especially in the last few short decades, and the need for creative thinking is ever present. With a project called Bush Requiem, we created, it was a presentation in collaboration with a visual artist, Janet Lawrence, the Sydney Environment Institute, and the arts organisation Artology. It was a 2-week event of visual art, music, poetry, performance, literature, science, philosophy, and environmental advocacy with First Nations input, with the goal to create an experience to be present to the reality of loss due to climate. It was a live event with limited COVID audience, but we ensured the papers, films, music, art created was distributed online. By collaborating with the willing cohort of activists, Indigenous people, creators, scientists, and artists, the network created a situation where we had pooled resources to make it a reality, and hence we gained a wider audience to the experience. I'll end with a very short 1-minute video about that to illustrate. And just another thing in our companies, we're constantly revising our priority. And in Artology, as Benjamin said, we do a lot of experimental creative learning programs, but now we're shifting that to everything must be done for purpose. And I know we're not the only organisation to be thinking this way. So the successful Fanfare project, which we adopted from the Royal Opera House in London, is one such example. It's grown to over, just hundreds of people applying, 32 new works a year, 3 orchestras, and 8 major venues around the country broadcasting the fanfares to thousands of people. And it's had lots of offshoots. However, the team has come together and said it's not enough. We have to do something that reflects climate change and what we're doing to reach our audience, and the musicians and performers and everyone has come back to us. So what we're doing now is launching a program, which is a musical work called of Welcome to Country, with the goal of building awareness of our First Nations people and their understanding of culture, climate, and country. So in summary, just some of the lessons that we've learned is that we use the systems thinking approach. That is, we ensure that there's a backbone support structure, even at the smallest program to the larger ideas or art or issues that we're dealing with, to support the collaborations with all sorts of diverse people around the table. So by scheming, collaborating with these creative climate organisations, activists, scientists, government bodies, local councils, Aboriginal mobs, it helps ensures that there's a clarity, purpose, perspective and competence that's needed to deliver what we need to do. We engage in First Nations people with their knowledge of country and climate. We look for support everywhere we can. It's not just in our industry, but it's in every other industry, because we are hitting those goals that we need to. We get active with other groups and collectively lobby local government agencies to federal bodies to have more inclusive policies, catch up to the rest of the world in good climate policy, to reduce equality and increase resources for arts education. And we love technology. We invest in technology. It's our friend. And lastly, we have fun along the way. Burnout is not an option. And all of us need to be on this road to provoke the change at the rate we need to collectively see to regenerate this one only and precious ecosystem at our doorstep. So thanks for listening. I'd now like to just finish with that 1 minute Bush Requiem video, if you'd like to do something magical. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. That was just perfect, Anna. I get really homesick. You've captured what it is to be in Australia so beautifully, and you've captured, yeah, space and thought and time and all these things. And you've reminded us that you've used the expression a couple of times that there is just one Earth, and working together to save this one place is what we have to do. I can't recommend highly enough that you do watch the Van Diemen's Band and the Tasmanian Youth Orchestra short video that Anna mentioned during her speech. It shows the Spring Bay Mill spectacularly, and it shows musicians and environment in ways that we can perhaps prove to other people how important the arts and environment really are together and how powerful that is. Thank you so much, Anna. Please stay with us as long as you can, but we understand it's very late in Tasmania. Thank you. I'd like to introduce our next speaker, our panelist on today's session, Mr. Freeman Shen. Freeman, thank you for joining us from Shanghai. Hello. I'll read the biography that we've received and then invite you to say a few words. Freeman has lived and worked in China, Canada, and the United States. He led the team to accomplish Geely's acquisition of Volvo, which is the largest overseas acquisition in China's auto industry. And then he took charge of restructuring Volvo's global structure, including global board of directors and senior management. Mr. Shen was honored as the first person to really engage the globalization of China's automobile industry. And he set up the WM, or WIMA, motor company with the dream of further contributing to the country in 2015. WM is the abbreviation of Weltmeister, German for world champion. WIMA is a frontrunner in the Chinese electric vehicle market, providing smart mobility services based on the electric connected vehicles to change the way of modern transportation. WIMA establishes R&D centers, sub-companies and branches in Germany, Beijing, Shanghai, Chengdu, and Wenzhou, and has more than 2,500 employees. Freeman, as a Volvo driver myself, thank you for all the work that you have done and continue to do. And there's no doubt that what you're doing in EV transportation is the future. So thank you for joining our panel today on climate and culture and reflecting on business culture that is engaged with climate issues as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Benjamin, for having me here today. I would like to share a little bit what we are doing for the climate change. You know, before the automotive industry, I was in electricity generation business for a few years. So I work in electricity generation factories, power plants, and also the electricity transmission factories, transmission companies. And then I switched to automotive for over 20 years in United States, Europe, and China. Today, I'm running my own company. I found WM Motor late 2015. WM Motor, it's a smart electric vehicle company. I want to emphasize it's not only an EV, but it's a smart connected EV, which help to improve the climate impact. I actually love car. I spent last 20 plus years in car industry. But actually, if you're looking back what I've done before, it's a bit insane because the ICE car, the engine, the internal combustion engine cars put smog in the air, create a lot of traffic and congestion, and cause accidents. Believe it or not, you know, people enjoy moving around. You know, we are human beings. We just cannot stay one place, but we have to go out, we have to move, we have trouble. But the vehicles actually help that, obviously. But on the other hand, create some issues, just what I said. In last 5 years, it seems a little crazy for me to say now. I'm hoping for future with fewer cars on the road. And hopefully most of the cars are smart EVs, and the cars can do more for us. You know, in the auto industry, there's a lot of big changes ever happen right now. It's taking place right now. Not only the vehicles, obviously, the way people travel, but most importantly, had a lot of impact on the climate, on the cities. And if you're looking around, the governments around the world are committed to change the way we move, mostly driven by the quest for the carbon neutrality. You know, over 110 countries and economics had committed to achieve carbon neutrality by the end of 2050. Obviously, EV will play center role in this change. You know, today most of the car is powered by ICE, by engines, and some of them powered by batteries. They are not smart car because they are not connected. If you have chance to let the vehicle all connect each other, you actually will improve the efficiency, reduce the emission, obviously. Even for engine car, if you connect them, you have the way to make sure you always optimize the way you travel. Obviously, you will reduce the emission. For the electric vehicle, it will be even better. A lot of people challenge that. They said that electric vehicle is not zero emission, which is true. The electric vehicles still use electricity, right? The electricity need to be generated in a few different ways. Coal mine power plant, and then you have a lot of the solar power, the wind energy, and hydro power plant, and some of the power plant in Europe are basically a nuclear power plant. But overall, the clean energy in the electricity generation, it's improved quite significantly. Even in China, it's over 20% of the electricity generated through the clean energy, as I just mentioned. But even the coal mine power plant in China and most of the other developed countries, we have a high efficiency, big coal mine power plant, meaning although it's not zero emission, but the efficiency has been improved and emission has been optimized and reduced quite significantly in the 20 years. But even that, it's not zero emission, but from the regulator point of view, it's still much easier to control and continue to reduce the emission, because looks this way. In China had over 250 million vehicles on roads. It's a huge number. In my mind, it's like a 250 or more or less engines running on the road. Trying to regulate those 250 million engines, reduce their emission, is very challenging because it's people's private properties. They can run the car any way they want. You have no way to ban them, ask them to reduce or replace the vehicles. If they're willing to do that, fine. But if they don't, in your mind, you see 250 million engines running all the time, burning the oils and emissions. In US, you have nearly over 200 million vehicles also. Again, in my mind, it's 200 million engines on the road. And for the power plant, even a country like China, China had about over 100 power plant. Most of them are high efficient, clean, relatively clean, obviously, coal mine and nuclear. So from a regulator point of view, it's much easier to control this 100 power plant and trying to reduce the emission, trying to make it more clean. So in other words, it doesn't matter how you compare, electric vehicle still would be a much better solution for climate change and reduce the climate impact on the environment and the society we are living in. On the other hand, if we use more technology on those electric vehicles, that even better, because we are not only making connect vehicles, but we also putting a lot of new technologies on them, including artificial intelligence, autonomous driving, big data, cloud and edge computing, 5G connectivities, and also highly efficient e-powertrain. And those technology will again help the vehicle become more efficient and more clean. And also, I'm trying to share you a story. Even let's looking at the parking. Today in the big cities, we have to spend a lot of investment, a lot of space to build the parking space, the parking lot next to the center of the city, next to the shopping malls. Those are waste time. I mean, those are waste space. The technology we developed, actually we started to deliver a vehicle April this year. We call a level 4 autonomous valet parking. It allows you just drop off your car and you just go shopping, and the car will drive hundreds of meters away and then parking the space that you designate. In that sense, the autonomous driving electric vehicle will help the people reduce the space for parking. You can imagine that we can use those space for performing arts. You have so many different kind of parking space can be convert into the space for kids, the performing arts, and you can put some other greener space for human beings. That's already help us to reduce the climate impact on us. You know, and also interestingly, for autonomous driving, we also had a technology we call the V2X, meaning vehicle to everything. It means the vehicle should connect it with the infrastructure. That actually will, again, helping the efficiency of the way we move, reduce emission, and then obviously free up a lot of space for the human beings. You don't necessarily need to own the vehicles. I think in the young generation in the future, next 20 years, the ownership is not that important. The accessibility to vehicles, it's much more prioritized over the ownership, meaning you can use a mobile phone, just get a vehicle and then send it to the place you want, and just when you leave the vehicle will drive away to pick up somebody else. Meaning with a certain amount of population, you will have much less vehicles. That's what I'm just saying in the beginning. We believe that we will need much less vehicles on road, but the vehicle can do much better for us, for the society, and definitely for the climate change. That's what we're trying to do now. It's a big plan. It's not only involving our customer, our user, obviously also the governments, and then also the whole ecosystem need to be developed. The algorithm for autonomous driving. We need to continue to develop highly efficient batteries. We need to improve the transmission efficiency for electricity. We need to get clean energy in the electricity generation, not only 30%, hopefully 80% in the future. And then, but we strongly believe we don't need so many cars on the roads. Not everyone need to own a car. Not every family need 2-3 cars. You know, probably will. I don't know. I hope we can cut about 0.5% of the vehicles on road. You know, you can imagine in the United States or China, you only got half of the vehicle we have on the road running, and with much less emission, obviously, and still you will have a much more happy journey and fun journey, because you can play music, you can look in a movie, you can take a nap, and the vehicle will ship you to where you want. And you know, it's not easy, but it's starting now. You know, not only my company, WM Motor, is working on that. We have a few startup companies in China working on this direction very aggressively. Hopefully, we have a chance to work with our friends. I spend a lot of time in the United States. I spend a lot of time in Gothenburg, Sweden, obviously, Milano and Torino, Italy, and Stuttgart, Germany, and hope someday we'll see more Vitameister vehicles, less emission, less vehicles, do more for people. I think that's all, and I expecting the Q&A in the future.
Well, Freeman, thank you so much. You've just taken me into a completely different imagination of what urban experiences can be like. And I want to raise 2 very quick points. You know, one, we all love technology, or I think many of us love technology and use it, and it's part of our future armory to adapt to the world ahead. And I really enjoy your big picture thinking to reimagine a sector. And I believe that's our opportunity in the performing arts sector coming out of COVID. We can reimagine what we want it to be in the coming years. You touched on so many lifestyle changes and so many important points, but I wanted to bring back 2 questions. One has come from the room. I'll come to that question in a second, but I want to come back to the driving force that took you in this direction in 2015. Your commitment to climate improvement. Was it a market opportunity, or was it a belief? What drove you to this in this direction?
Well, this is a really good question, because when you're trying to do new things, sometimes the government want to push that way. Sometimes it was the consumer want to go that way. And sometimes, you know, you have an ecosystem, everyone saying you should go that way. Fortunately, the electrification in our industry was basically pushed by all three important forces. Obviously, the government making a lot of commitment, not only the Chinese government, I believe globally, 110 countries and economics had committed that by 2050 for the carbon neutrality. And the young generation, at least in China, they are very interesting in something different. You know, electric vehicle, not only the power source are changed from engine to battery. Most importantly, there's a lot of new function has been put in there. The we call it smart cockpit. Yeah. We call the autonomous driving technologies. And the young generation was really interesting. They probably get bored by driving very durable, we call them mechanical vehicles with the engines, noise, vibrations, emission. You know, interestingly, in China consumer mind, the sound of the engine is not something fun to them. It might be different from some developed country. You know, when I live in some European country, people like the sound, right? They think this is the power voice. But China, the young generation didn't appreciate that. They want something quiet. They want something the less vibration. So and then you put a lot of new technology, just like smartphone versus the analog phone. So in the consumer part, the force is also strong. The average, we have delivered over 60,000 vehicles today to about 200 Chinese city. Our average user is less than 35 years old. So they are very young. And then third force, I'm trying to say it's the ecosystem. You know, there's a lot of software company in China, the 5G connectivity, the carrier, the battery company, and the electricity company. They all believe that we should work together and then make the electrification become a reality. Not necessarily because the government trying to do that, not necessarily because the customer want to do that, but the ecosystem supplier technology partnership, they think is the right direction. So I think we are very fortunate that we have this opportunity. We can work together with these other driving forces.
Thank you. I could talk about this for hours. This is absolutely fascinating. And what I enjoy very much and believe in is building platforms where we can have different sectors coming together to achieve or to share their experience in their sector, and we can all learn from one another in how you realize something. So first of all, I wish to say congratulations on what you've already achieved. We have had a question, or at least one comment, which is probably going to open a whole other box of questions, but if you could keep it relatively short, the question is, do you believe in carbon tax? Yes, I believe so, because I think sometimes probably it's not that objective to say that, because I was in the industry. I think I'm building electric vehicles. Obviously, I want the carbon tax so the people can be introduced into the electrification world. Yes, for me, of course. I'm not the objective, so. No, Freeman, thank you so much. You've also touched on something that's important in our sphere, and thinking about user experience and user demands or user expectation. And I think performing arts coming out of COVID, technology's changed a few experiences during our period in lockdown. And I think people returning to the performing arts sector are looking for slightly enhanced experiences that they, as a result of COVID and technology advances. So thank you so much for all of your contribution, and please stay for discussion. Okay, thank you. I'm going to jump to, you mentioned Gothenburg. I'm going to jump to another Scandinavian country and invite Timo Kyrönen to be our next speaker. Timo is the general manager of the Lahti Symphony Orchestra in Finland. He holds 3 master's degrees from the Sibelius Academy in Helsinki. And Timo's educational background is strongly in music and arts management. In June 2020, he achieved a leadership decision-making course at the Harvard Kennedy School. From 2003 onwards, Teemu has worked at the Lahti Symphony Orchestra in different positions, becoming its general manager from 2014. Since 2019, Teemu has also been the deputy chair of the Association of Finnish Symphony Orchestras. The Lahti Symphony Orchestra has 67 full-time musicians, and it has started its regular concerts. In 2007, the orchestra was one of the first orchestras in the world to start regular concerts being broadcast online. And in April 2021, it launched its own concert app, SL Classic Live. In 2015, it presented the project Carbon Neutral Lahti Symphony Orchestra, aiming to be the first carbon neutral symphony orchestra in the world by 2025. The project received Classical Next Innovation Award in Rotterdam in 2018 and has been featured in Climate Week in New York and on BBC Radio 3. And I'm delighted to read the final point that Teemu has also reached the top of Uhuru Peak, Mount Kilimanjaro, in December 1999. Teemu, thank you for joining us during your vacation. I invite you to talk about your work, your lessons, your vision for building climate and its impact into our cultural practice.
Many thanks, Benjamin, for the great presentation. Not to be too honest, we were the first orchestra to begin the regular online concerts in the world. Not one of them, but otherwise, everything went well. Thank you so much. Okay, yes, maybe we could have I sent a short video, very short, so as a kickoff. So if you find it somewhere. That is my slideshow, which I appreciate also, but I sent it earlier. If you can't find it, so I mean, maybe we'll do the slides first, and if you can find it, then it's the grande finale. Then after the slides, so let's not use too much time for that. Okay, thanks so much. So. Thank you again for the opportunity to join this event, much appreciated. And greetings from Lahti, Finland, from a wooden concert hall called the Sibelius Hall, according to our national composer, Jean Sibelius. The next slide, please. So at the moment in the 2021, Lahti is the green capital of Europe, the European green capital. And this is an award given by the European Commission. And I strongly recommend to examine the operations done in Lahti, because I mean, you need really hard data, environmental data, in order to get this award. The next slide, please. So, for example, we have a very the waste management in the city is something that is being examined throughout the world. And for example, Lahti was the first major city in Finland which finished burning coal. And here you can see a map of these former cities being the winners of this award. So we are the most northern and most eastern and the most northeastern city to win this award. The next slide, please. And here is our project called Carbon Neutral Lahti Symphony Orchestra. And this was is a project which was launched in 2015 to mark Jean Sibelius' 150th anniversary. So a contribution to the efforts to reduce the pace of global climate change by gradually making the orchestra's activities carbon neutral. And again, as the first orchestra in the world, hopefully. Although, of course, hoping to everyone to join. That is the key thing here, which I will say many times, I guess, because alone we can't, unfortunately, save the world. The next slide, please. So here is the kind of basis to our project. In autumn 2015, a workshop with the whole organization, so our 67 musicians plus the administration, was done. And here I want to point out that this whole project started as a result of this workshop. So that we had first the workshop, and then in the end of the day, I presented the idea, okay, this is something we could work out together. Are we in or are we out? Because I think this was, at least for me, totally crucial as a general manager, that this is not something which is given from the management that, okay, let's be green, and kind of wanting everybody to agree. So this, luckily enough, everybody said yes, and we started to process on these things. Another very important thing was that we had a possibility to get a student in the Lappeenranta University of Technology. Nowadays, actually, officially the Lappeenranta Lahti University of Technology, so it is based in both cities. But then already in 2015, there was this degree program in environmental technology already in Lahti. And Pilvi Virolainen did her master's thesis on the carbon footprint of our orchestra. So this was a kind of very important basis, and has been it since that it's just not that, okay, we want to be green, and then as of course our knowledge of substance is somewhere else than in these environmental matters. So we had this kind of scientific study, so on which we could base our project. And here is one quote which I think again is very important, that it says here in the English abstract that particularly important is to get stakeholders to participate to reduction targets made by the symphony orchestra. Again, we can't do it alone, and would very much like to see everybody to join. And I think raising the awareness on this topic is maybe one of our most important assets, if not the most important. The next slide, please. So here is very shortly what was discovered in the thesis. Our principal burdens in this area, first of all, traffic, apparently written in French here, and then energy, recordings, acquisitions, and spin-offs. And of course, as a symphony orchestra, many of these issues are outside of our direct decision-making, but we try to influence on these, for example, the traffic and the energy. And I'm happy to show you in a moment that things are happening around us also. The next slide, please. Some years ago...
On your video? Yes.
Okay, the next slide, please. Okay, here. some years ago, we had this campaign called Green Button, and the idea was that when people bought our concert tickets online, after or in connection of that purchase, there was a possibility to push the green button and support these initiatives which were chosen together in collaboration with the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So very high-profile collaboration. We have appreciated it a lot. Thank you so much. It was done with a Ticketmaster company. Now we have a different company, and at the moment, unfortunately, there are some unclear areas in the Finnish legislation on collecting money in this kind of a system. So we are still working on that, hoping to get this in operation again sometime in the future. Okay, the next slide, please. And here is just a quick image of the Lahti Symphony Orchestra, kind of exotic setup, I would say, with a live audience. Those were the times, and hopefully will be coming again, the similar possibilities. This is the main auditorium of the Sibelius Hall, our wooden concert hall in Lahti, 1,229 seats altogether. And the next slide, please. So we, as the orchestra, we don't administrate the hall, but of course we are collaborating with the hall closely. And of course, for example, the energy issues are highly concentrated on the hall administration. And here you can see what is happening at the Sibelius Hall so far. The bulbs were transferred to LED bulbs in all public spaces in 2019. And then there has been a carbon neutral waste management since 2020. And now in April 21, they announced in the whole city of Lahti that it's carbon neutral heating. And hopefully next year at the Sibelius Hall, there will be carbon neutral electricity as well. And in the restaurant, the spoilage, they try to have it as small as possible. And what we have done in the orchestra, for example, we have been diminishing the amount of paper in the rehearsing copies of the music for the musicians. So that is quite a lot we have achieved. Of course, this is part of the process that digital services have come more and more developed. Okay, the next slide, please. And here is in the next slide, what we see here, our partnering company over 30 years already, Swedish BIS recording company, they started to use cardboard packages in 2019. And this was, in a way, nice thing also concerning our project, because these plastic packages was considered as one of the biggest burdens of our stakeholders in the thesis. So things happen. And now in 2021, we hope to do a checkup, probably with a local university. Okay, how are we doing after 5-6 years, and what should be done in order to achieve the carbon neutrality? Okay, the next slide, please. Here you just see many things happening also in the local area. This is the local hockey team, the Pelicans, and they have done a similar project also in Lahti. So good things happening also in other areas. in our surroundings. The next slide, please. This is one example in the raising the awareness. We had this recreational day for the orchestra in 2019. We spent this day planting, I think it was 6,000 spruce trees. So the whole orchestra was there planting the trees, and we had some education around the theme. The next slide, please. And here you can see happy spruce planters. And the next slide, please. And here are all of us after the day. It was so this was a kind of good example. It was great fun, and of course supporting our project as well. And then just a couple of slides which Benjamin already mentioned. The next slide, please. So this our project has got quite much international attention. It was presented at the Climate Week in New York City in 2017. The next slide, please. And here is the Classical Next Innovation Award 2018. And the next slide, please. It is the same theme. And then maybe the final slide we could take, please. So again, saying particularly important is to get stakeholders involved. This I say again and again. And of course, we see very encouraging examples around the world. For example, Julie's Bicycle has been doing a tremendous job in the UK for many, many years. And the project Orchestertes Wandels in Germany. And these kind of collaborations also, as this panel, and trying to find connections here and there around the theme, it is so very important. So happy to share some of our thoughts and ideas, and thank you so much. And now if you have found the video, so that is the blast you will experience. And hopefully with the sound. Okay, that was our orchestra playing with the bicycle helmets on, and this image and the video has been used also in connection of the European Green Capital project. Thank you so much.
Wonderful, Timu. Thank you so much. Working together is crucial, as you've explained and reminded us. What I also like, and something that I believe the arts and the performing arts sector can play a major role, is in storytelling the science behind climate and its impact, and perhaps translating it in ways that are perhaps more real in human connections than scientific data alone. So you've obviously rallied the orchestra and given it a sense of focus and a sense of an extra sense of purpose, which is evident in the activities that they're undertaking. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to welcome Jonathan Crane, who's joined us just now. And Jonathan, in some ways, what Timu was just talking about actually connects immediately with what an aspect of your field. So if I may, I'll just introduce you quickly and then invite you to say a few words. Jonathan Crane has spent the last 20 years working with companies in China. He's the founder and CEO of Crane Shares, which is owned by China International Capital Corporation. But Jonathan is a founding investor of Trella, a US-based, China-operated nature-based solutions company, growing and providing tree-based solutions to meet China's fast-growing environmental initiatives and needs. Jonathan received an MBA from Columbia Business School and a BA from Connecticut College. He's on the board of the US-China Strong Foundation and is a member of the Young Presidents Association. Organization, excuse me. Jonathan, Timu just showed us his orchestra planting trees in real life, as an occasion, as a direct contribution. And I'd be delighted for you to make some comments about Trello in particular, and why it exists and where you hope it will become and place itself.
Absolutely. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. Yeah, thank you so much for having me today and including Trello in this event. Trello is very focused on China and the environment, really through trees. And we've a few years ago, we established one of the leading nurseries in China with a state-of-the-art greenhouse and all the best technology. All local tree species are being grown there. We have about 1 million trees now at the nursery, and we really, we really believe in the future of what the Chinese government's doing in terms of the environment. And there's a lot of strong Chinese government policy being put in place to create really healthy green environments. And there's a lot of engagement with corporations in China and also with people in China around helping the environment. And we saw the trees and growing healthy trees as a way to lower carbon, lower pollution, create cleaner green environments. Biodiversity and wildlife focus, and then a lot of social benefits. And this is all urban forestry in the cities of China, and then also we're doing forestry projects in China. But what's the best way to, we see environmental issues and sort of climate initiatives as long term. It's something that the world is quickly moving towards. But how do you make this long term within citizens of the world? We really believe in education around this and engaging young people, okay, in educating them. And so we've not only focused a lot on growing healthy trees in our tree initiatives in nursery as we expand across China, but we also have put in place a lot of educational opportunities around the environment and around trees. And I think maybe we show, there's a video that we can start off by showing our nursery and greenhouse, if we could maybe play that. And this is in Taizhou, China. That's is a city of about 5 million people in Jiangsu province. It's about a 3-hour drive north of Shanghai. That's great. Thank you. Thank you for showing that. So that's our core base where we're growing a lot of trees, but we've also created applications for consumers, okay, to participate in the gifting of trees and the planting of trees. And we've set up an application you can see here on the right of virtual tree gifts. And it's really set up on the Tencent platform for WeChat users. There's about 1 billion WeChat users. And it allows individuals in China to give the gift of tree planting to friends and family and colleagues. And what we do is we actually we plant a real tree in Taizhou, as people come in and use the application. But really what we're also providing is education around the tree gifting, and that's all the environmental benefits are being tracked for each tree that's planted over 10 years, 20 years, how much carbon's been taken out of the atmosphere, how much pollution's been lowered, and all the environmental benefits of that tree over a period of time. And there's special meanings too. We're finding there's such a positive feeling that when you give a tree gift to somebody, and you're planting the tree in either someone's name or you give it as a present. There's a real special feeling and bond that you have between each other, and so we're seeing this as a real trend that's becoming more popular. And so that's for consumers in China, and we're also finding corporations are now excited about this, where they can engage their customers in giving them trees, tree plantings, and then also employee recognition and benefits. So we see a lot of alignment of both people and corporations in wanting to associate themselves and their brands with the environment now. And we're obviously see a big future, and the world needs a lot more trees. So engaging consumers and corporations, we think, is a very important part of that. We can show a demo of the mini app, which I think we also have here, if that's possible. That's great, thank you. That's great. Thank you for showing that. And there's we have 17 native trees from China to choose from there, and so that's become very popular. We also more engagement. A lot for youth is our focus on schools in China, and we've done 100. We call them 100 tree projects across multiple schools. We've done over 30 schools now. Where we've donated these trees to the schools, and then we create very special ceremonies where the children at the schools are actually doing tree plantings and digging and planting the trees in the city and near campus. And we find that at a young age, the engagement of planting of trees and understanding how that benefits the environment long term. We think we're, the more children being educated and engaged in, helping the environment, we think that that's going to be very positive for the future. And so we've partnered with a lot of the local schools to provide, environmental education and create, extracurricular events in addition to online education. And regarding online education, we've also, some of our experts on staff have, done online classes for many students in China and the United States around green education. We've also, and we've created a whole curriculum around that. We've also put on our first annual global conference, our Trella Global Environmental Conference, which was in March in Shanghai, but it was virtual with hundreds of participants from around the world and in China with a lot of leading experts. So we think also creating educational conferences of exchanging ideas and showing a lot of examples and case studies of success on green initiatives is also important, and it creates more momentum. Other areas that I also want to talk about is we've done. Here's the civic. I'm sorry, on the slide here. This is the 100 tree projects at various schools in China, and this has been received very well. We keep getting more and more schools requesting us coming to campus and doing these type of 100 tree projects. And the goal is to do this in many cities across China. And then you see a picture of Eric Hammond, who's one of our chief scientists, is speaking to a whole room full of kids in China, students. Next slide, please. Yeah, and then so we've created online courses. Here's our global conference with a lot of the leading world authorities. And we've also, and maybe next slide, I'll show the art competition. Yeah, we did this. This was very exciting and well received. We had a virtual museum, and this was, many young people in China, showing their artwork, all focused on environment and environment-related content, and they're just beautiful artwork, and it really shows, young people's view of the environment, vision for a clean, green future, and it was very inspiring. We had many people viewing this across China and the world, and we're going to, continue to do this on a regular basis, these virtual art exhibits with, all focused on the environment. Again, engaging the youth and educating them, and also allowing them to express themselves on how they view the environment, both good and also negatively too. So it was very eye-opening also. And everyone, all of the students and participants received tree gifts. So Trella always makes sure they plant a tree on behalf of the participants. And they had, we had about 300 artworks, total, and mostly young people, but we had different age groups, everywhere from 3 years old actually up to about 45 years old. So very exciting, and we'll continue that. Next slide, please. And then we've created a lot of collaborative partnerships with various, universities, corporations, and partners in China and the United States and globally. And this list is growing, and these are partners that we've done education with, we've done special tree planting initiatives with, participated in conferences, sponsored events. So We're very proud that this list continues to grow, and some very good names here too. So, you know, I appreciate the opportunity, and also the, you know, really appreciate this event being put on.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Thank you for this excellent overview of not only the product, but the impact, which for me and for us is most important, to see the outcomes of our work. I just had one question as to, is it China specific? Are you imagining this project to be rolled out in other countries, or is it related particularly to a way that their government is seeing this issue?
Yeah, it's definitely global in scope, but our execution, you know, and actually our on the ground execution is really China right now, and we're starting there. We see that there's a lot of work to be done, and you know, and opportunity in China, but we'll be open to, you know, taking the similar models to other countries too.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We have two more panelists, and so it's a pleasure now to introduce Stéphane Noël, who's also active in cross-cultural and cross-global projects. Stéphane Noël is the Artistic and Executive Director at Materialize, and he's joining us today from Switzerland instead of Hong Kong, where we thought he was going to be joining us. Better for the time difference situation today. Stéphane is currently residing in Hong Kong, China. Stéphane Noël has worked mostly as a producer and curator of contemporary dance, music, and theatre. He was also the director of Les Urbains Festival in Lausanne and the co-director of Belloir Bolwerk International Festival in Fribourg. His advisory capacities led him to join the artistic and editorial board of Gaieté Lyrique in Paris and act as a consultant for European Lab, the platform for cultural innovation, organized by Artifati in Lyon during the Nuit Sonore Festival, as well as for AETM, which is based in Brussels. And he was a statutory advisor there for 3 years. Over the last couple of years, Stéphane has not only been producing independent artists in Europe and East Asia, but has also been collaborating with Swiss institutions such as Pro Helvetia, Rezo, the cities of Zurich and Basel, and numerous cultural institutions, helping them connect with their Asian counterparts and producing platforms, showcase, or networking events on their behalf. Stéphane, it's a pleasure. Thank you for joining us today. The floor is yours. Talk to us.
Thank you, Benjamin and UNITAR and GFPA, and good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to take part to this meeting and to hear so different topics across and maybe cross-pollinate together. It's very important for me to have this kind of opportunities and extend my my view on maybe beyond simply performing arts. I also want to give a particular congratulations to Timur for the work he's done at the Lattice Symphony Orchestra. I think it resonates with my concert as a practitioner of performing arts, as a producer. And although I work in the same branch globally, I feel I'm really at the opposite in terms of scale and geography. Of course, I share the same concern about environment, and which I think are justified and very serious at the moment. And I'm trying to commit with the artists I collaborate with to find more sustainable practices. But of course, it's a smaller scale, and it's for me, it's very important also to say that my view on this changed quite a lot since I moved from Europe to Asia 5 years ago. Particularly having worked with artists from Southeast Asia, and maybe it would also extend to artists in the global South. I feel that the general conditions and the relevance of traveling is quite different. I feel that in the branch, in our cultural industry, as much as in other industries, we have mismanage our resources, and we've been wasteful, notably in the traveling. And now is a good time as ever to rethink the way we work. However, when I say this we have mismanaged, I understand more and more that this we is quite exclusively Western, or mostly Western citizens from Western nations with high standard of living, and that this freedom of movement that we've benefited from is also a luxury that is not being shared with the rest of the planet. And when I extend that to my practice in the performing arts, I feel that there's some unfairness in applying new models of carbon taxing. I mean, if it's made on the same level for everyone, because I think that we have been using and abusing it while other people haven't had a chance to do that. Still, I commit, as I say, I commit myself to do the best I can, step by step, brick by brick, towards this edifice. I don't have the scale of the Lattice Symphony or of Trello, which I admire greatly. And I focus this on allocation of resources and transportation. One of the, I wanted to say best practices I wanted to share, but actually there's no best practice because we are often less than perfect. Sometimes are good practices and we're always incremental. I think the starting point was to look at the carbon footprint of transportation, which is the most energy consuming part of my work. And from my position as a producer, I think it's definitely looking at the modes of transportation, the volumes of transportation, and the frequency. So this translates for me in trying to consolidate touring and reducing teams, trying to make sets much smaller or use digital media. And of course, particularly in the last 12 months, use remote conferencing, remote conversation to supplement the creation and or touring process. Maybe I don't want to go case by case because I think it's quite minor, but I want to maybe seize this opportunity and this platform to mention a couple of projects that I'm not involved with, but that could be very interesting for the attendants here and for all of us in our branches. It's a British artist based in Brussels, I believe, called Hampton, who launched a project called Showing Without Going. So it's a kind of catalog of new practices to reduce or not travel at all, and still make art that will cross the borders. It's very important to find the solution because we don't want to lose empathy and the empathy that we get from other cultures. And we certainly don't want to end up going to theaters and seeing on stage just the exact mirror of who we are. And we need to be confronted to other cultures, other topics, other problems, other solutions. So I think that Showing Without Going will be published as a website on the 2nd of September. It's been produced and supported by Théâtre de Vidy in Lausanne in Switzerland and will be premiered in Zurich during the Theater Spectacle Festival. I will share a link to Benjamin who can share it to you all later on as soon as they have published this website. So that's, I see that we are running a bit out of time and I don't want to go, as I said, case by case. And I think there's Inge still hasn't said anything, and Henry. Ah, no, okay, sorry, I saw panelist. Yeah, anyway, so I rather put this on what I said, what I unpacked on the table and leave it for discussion rather than, I don't know what you want to do.
D'accord. Stefan, thank you very much, because I think what's important is that we each operate in our place or space. And what we try to do with these conferences and the work we do is bring different artists, business leaders, organization leaders, all at different ages and stages and scales to learn from one another. It's not about having a nursery as large as Trello. It's about our commitment and the way and the decisions we make on a daily basis. So thank you very much for your contribution, and I'll make sure to share that link about Anne Hampton's work as soon as you share it. We have our final speaker today. I'm sorry to keep you waiting, Henry, but you've been listening, and we're going to cross to the UK now before you play Germany in the Euro later this afternoon.
I'm not personally playing.
Henry Southern is joining us from London, and Henry Southern is the manager of tours and projects at Harrison Parrott, one of the world's largest classical music artist agencies or artist management agencies, but now broadening into other genres of music presentation and other presentation models as well. Henry Southern specializes in tours, creative partnerships, and fundraising. Complementing his music degree from King's College London, Henry has completed a micro MBA at the London School of Economics and the Find Your Way Arts Leadership course with the Association of British Orchestras. His previous roles include festival curatorship for series at King's Place and at St. John's Smith Square in London, worldwide tour management, business development for a crowdfunding website in Hong Kong, China, consultancy projects for Sydney University, and managing the award-winning professional choir, Tenebrae. Henry, thank you for joining. We've got 15 minutes left, so I'm just going to throw the floor to you immediately. And,
sure, thank you, Benjamin. I'll endeavour to be succinct, so there's time for questions at the end. So yes, as Benjamin said, Harrison Parrott is a international arts management company. We've been established for 50 years, of which I've only been part of it for 2 of those years, but it's been quite a ride in those last couple of years, particularly working in my role principally in touring and all the various challenges we've been faced with recently. But yes, as Benjamin said, it's principally classical music, but we work across a variety of fields, music of all genres, dance, theatre, and virtual reality, with artists such as the Vienna Philharmonic, English National Ballet, and Quincy Jones. So really, where I'm coming from in this discussion is we endeavour to balance I would say, a collective belief in the power of international cultural exchange and our responsibility for the planet. And that debate, I think, will define my career and many of ours here on this talk and of our peers. And Harrison Parrott feel that we were talking about this before it was cool, before it got very on trend. We've been talking for many years now. And really, our mantra is to embrace these challenges, the greater challenge of climate change. So to just take it for example, being based in the UK at the moment with British orchestras, they have the 3-pronged attack of Brexit, COVID, and climate. And our approach is to make sure that our industry and our clients that we work with, such as those orchestras, are in a position to thrive and not just survive and embrace those challenges for the future. So the way we've gone about that is 3 ways, really. Firstly, getting our own house in order and to develop an environmental policy for our company. Secondly, to endeavour to work with others and our clients based around the world. And thirdly, to raise awareness. So firstly, getting our own house in order. We instigated an independent audit, and we are now a carbon neutral plus organisation. So that audit basically took all our travel as individuals, and also from our various offices in London, Paris, Munich, and in Beijing. And we all then voted as a company-wide initiative on a suitable reforestation scheme, which we then review on an annual basis. We endeavour to ensure that with our policies, the environmental sustainability is very much at the heart of our practice. And we report on this progress annually and share it with others in the wider sector so we can all share in these learnings. And I think that's been a common theme in all the discussions we've heard today. And that really is to hold ourselves to account and practice practice as we preach, rather. Secondly, policy and working with others. So we endeavor to use our international outlook to learn from others, and we've really been inspired by Lati Symphony, and we work very closely with Timo and his colleagues over there, and the extraordinary work they're doing. Other couple of examples of other ensembles that we work with, for example, the Helsingborg Symphony Orchestra in Sweden, I think was the first orchestra to say we are only going to engage artists, that's being conductors or soloists, that are either based in Sweden or can get there by train. And what I thought was fantastic, that was in 2019. At the time, I felt that was seemingly quite a radical approach. But now I think people will be far more on board with it. But what I was really encouraged by was our wider industry had a very collegiate approach. So they told them, and we helped with this conversation as well, about who was in Sweden at the time already, and tried to make sure they can really realize that really fantastic initiative and very bold initiative at the time. I think it still is bold today. Another example, the Orchestra of Age of Enlightenment in February 2020, just before lockdown, they traveled to Poland and to Hungary, touring entirely by train. I think they spent 72 hours on the train, which again seems completely extraordinary, but it's those sorts of initiatives and that outlook which we have looking across the world, which have really inspired us. So going back to our policy, essentially it comes down to more sustainable touring. And we do that by looking at avoid, reduce, or offset, which I'm sure people will be familiar with. So for us, avoid, that can be through a number of ways. I mentioned earlier, we work in virtual reality. Those are virtual reality installations. So for example, we work with a Philharmonia orchestra that have a fantastic digital department. You can put on some virtual reality goggles, headset, and you can be immersed with an orchestra. It's like you have the conductor Esteban Salonen standing right in front of you. You can hear his pages being turned. You've got the violins and violas either side of you. It's extremely inspiring, but that requires one person to travel out. And so it's looking at those more sustainable ways. Other concept touring examples could be an orchestra, for example, could come up with a fantastic initiative that is led and curated perhaps by a conductor, and that concepts could then be transported to other orchestras worldwide. Reducing is the second point. So that can be realized in a number of measures, really, from train travel, as I mentioned earlier, to residency models. So we are trying to actively shift from linear touring. By that I mean being in one city one night, the next night being another, and so on. And to try and space it out, and also to have a more meaningful cultural exchange in each city where an ensemble goes to, where an artist goes to. And also alongside that, looking at cluster models. So trying to challenge our colleagues' strict exclusivity requirements. So typically, for example, Dortmund, Essen, Cologne are all cities that are very close to each other and would hate to have the same program or same artist. So how can we work around that in order to reduce the amount of travel, still have a meaningful cultural exchange, and still have something, some artistic differentiation in order to engage their audiences, and again approach it in a more sustainable way. Other elements of reducing can be green rider requirements. That could be through stipulating what meals you have, the cutlery provided, which I've actually found particularly challenging in the US, where there's lots of plastic cutlery and all that sort of thing, but I'm sure I'll be challenged by that. And as Stefan mentioned earlier, reducing the set for certain productions. So the weight of the cargo can have a huge impact on your carbon footprint. And then thirdly, as I mentioned, offsetting. One of the things we've been trying to advise our clients on is ensuring they are paying into reforestation schemes that are credible. I would really highly recommend Kew Gardens, who a few months ago released their 10 golden rules of reforestation. And alongside that, it's obviously great to hear about Jonathan's work with Trello, and I'll be sure to check out that as well. Our last element, raising awareness. So towards the end of 2019, our esteemed executive director, Jasper Parrott, put out a call to arms to our industry to encourage them to really embrace this debate, and that was through an article in The Guardian. We have also very recently signed up to Music Declares Emergency. They are a fantastic initiative, which I'm sure many people are aware of. They partner with Judy's Bicycles. I think Timo mentioned them as well. And they they basically want to instigate an open conversation about the challenges of creating a sustainable media profession. And they commit to using the platform, their own platforms, to inspire, educate, and demonstrate change. And that's what we're all about, really. Raising awareness is also through our wonderful 250 plus artists on our roster, who are by and large all really actively engaged in this. Benjamin, you mentioned, it was wonderful, the storytelling, the science, and that can be realized in a number of ways. I mean, just to give a few examples, we're working with Sebastian Salgado, the Amazonian photographer, about he's got a wonderful exhibition, but also a complimentary concert, which displays pictures of the Amazon, which highlights the awful deforestation that's happening there, and has a complimentary curated repertoire that goes alongside that. There can be slightly more subtle ways of approaching the whole climate theme. For example, the Philharmonia Orchestra have a nature theme this year, which is perhaps more subtle, but it looks about how nature has inspired us and how it's something we should retain. And one of the projects we're particularly proud of at the moment is we're working with the British Council, who commissioned us to put together a creative response to the climate emergency at COP26 in Glasgow. That is very closely aligned with the UN Sustainability Development Goals, which I'm sure will appeal to Nayara and other colleagues on this panel. And we're working very closely with Royal Conservatory of Scotland on that project. I'll be sure to share a link to that afterwards. So there are many different artistic approaches, many different practical approaches, but that hopefully gives a brief snapshot of what we're up to.
Thank you so much, Henry. Terrific to see, organization-led commitment filtering through to all the activities related to the end results. I'm particularly aware from my own professional experience that every organization, every artist, every venue operates in its own marketplace, in its own culture, in its own policy setting. And you've touched on a few points there where some of the points you've raised about Harris and Parrott reflect, I would say, quite active UK commitment to climate change as a country and as an audience pushing some of these government recognition. You mentioned carbon neutral. You're a carbon neutral organization. You've following an audit, and you is that a government organ? Is there a government entity that is sort of allocating these or approving these peer-reviewed qualifications?
There's actually an independent organisation. It's very remiss of me, I can't recall the name of it, but I'll be sure to share it with you afterwards. But you're right, it's definitely part of the zeitgeist at the moment in the UK. I think that's partly aligned with the fact we are presenting the COP26 conference in Glasgow in November. So it's very much a core part of the policy for the current government in the UK.
Great, well, thank you. And it ties in with what Stefan was saying about considering how artists travel and how artists, how we make the decisions about why artists should travel as much as they do. And is travel really necessary, or as necessary as perhaps we all thought it used to be? Definitely opinions are changing. I would like to thank each and every panelist for their time today. We are actually 2 minutes away from our closing time. So I thank you all. Stefan, I'm sorry, I notice a hand, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry for,
No.
I just wanted to reply to Henry, because I think this initiative is very laudable, but we have to keep in mind that it's a position that's maybe restricted to Europe. We have open borders, we have good train infrastructure, and it doesn't apply to artists who don't have a golden passport, and artists who don't have access to carbon neutral or low carbon impact modes of transportation. And that's what I was trying to say when I compare my work in Asia, where we are dealing with an archipelagos of millions of islands with very different religion, languages, political system, very little democracy, and a lot of reliance on the so-called West to produce an alternative cultural discourse. So I think it's good in Europe what we're doing, but it's very important for me to look from the other end and see that artists I work with in the Philippines, if they cannot come to Europe to present their work, they cannot be artists. And if we do that, we will kill diversity, and we will exclude, we'll create a mainstream, white Western mainstream artistic flow and exclude everything else. So I think it's very good that we lead by example, both in richer countries and both in the arts, but we have to be also open-minded and try to find solutions that work for everybody. Sorry, thank you.
No, here, I completely agree.
Henry, did you want to say anything? Add any points?
I think that's a very fair point. I mean, just so you're aware, we're not just trying to apply this policy just to Europe. We are trying to apply actively to our touring worldwide. Of course, it's a lot easier when ensembles are the proximity. So traveling by train is a lot easier to do in Europe than it is, say, across Asia potentially. I just, as an aside, I joined a diversity conference a few weeks ago, and just picking up your point, Stefan, there was definitely very decent panels, but the last one was from young leaders in diversity, and they were the only people that talk about social demographic challenges and economic challenges, and that being really mindful. And I was actually really encouraged for my generation, the younger generation, so that's the forefront of their mind. And I think that in turn will inform environmental policy as well, I hope.
Thank you. Well, yes, we're right on closing time. So I wish, Timu, would you like to say any final words before I pass back to Ambassador Suazo to close today's session? Timu, are you, yes?
Yes. Well, I mean, as said before, these kind of events, what can you say, very important and coming also among these topics to approaching this very important topic from new angles and always widening one's perspectives. Thank you so much for the opportunity to join.
Thank you. It's great to have you. Tomorrow we will be joined by 6 guests, 6 expert panelists from the International Society for the Performing Arts, from the Green Room based in France, from Creative Carbon Scotland, Opera Europa, the Fusion Fund, and Inga from the Festival Academy. So I look forward very much to the discussion continuing tomorrow. And now I invite Ambassador Suazo to close today's session.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. As I said at the beginning, I was very, very pleased that we have this panel, because I learned so much today, and in particular, I was impressed by Mr. Timu's association with the United Nations Climate Fund and CCC, Mr. Freeman Shen with the automobile industry in China. I mean, all the panelists were extremely educational for UNITAR. So thank you very much to all of you for sharing your time. I imagine Henry with the Brexit House may have some other issues to think about it with these events. COVID is not helping in other hands, but I was really surprised to see how much performing arts are playing a role in sustainable development, climate change, and building better for our common cause as humanity. So Inge, thank you very much for being with us. Stefan also. So we'll see you tomorrow once again under your leadership, Benjamin. And thank you also to Lucia for supporting us. So I wish you, all of you, wherever you are, a happy end of the day, or a good morning, or a good evening. So thank you very much. I see you remind us this big game between Germans and Brits, and Henry was not playing in there. But anyway, sport is also playing a major role. It's a kind of performing art Yesterday, somebody was saying that a Messi goal in the South American Cup should be put in a museum. I mean, imagine that. So thank you very much from UNITAR New York office. I wish you well to all of you. Very pleased, and see you tomorrow to continuation of our conversation on these important topics. Thank you, Benjamin. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Thank you. Bye.